Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahe, tejasvina vadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Chapter 13 is an extension of chapter 7 and 9. So if we missed chapter 7 and 9, worry not. Chapter 13 is an extension of that. That's how the Bhagavad Gita works. If you missed one, don't worry. We will catch you up. Therefore, you're covered from all angles. Up to verse 23, Krishna has expounded 6 words which Arjuna has asked. The first word is kshetra. Kshetra means the field, and it relates to specifically the body-mind. Therefore, anything seen, as we are seeing now, as we are hearing this voice included, anything felt, the divine Midas touch, anything smelt. I remember a Kriya Yoga practice, it's some time ago, and I said that eventually after some time of practicing yoga, you will start to smell like sandalwood, and therefore you are liberated. So if you don't smell like sandalwood, sorry. Anything smelt, anything tasted, heard is kshetram, not self. That includes memories, all actions, karmas. So whatever action you're doing, the listening right now is an action. Sitting down on a chair is an action. That is also kshetram. Results of actions. Suppose you're listening right now and you say, nah, I want to go somewhere else. That whole thought and the going somewhere else is also kshetram. Or hopefully you stay. That staying is also an action, kshetram. The next word was kshetrajna. This is the knower of the field. And this knower is the one because of which sensations of the kshetram are distinctly known for what they are. One taste is distinctly known from another taste. Sight is distinctly known from hearing. Smelling is distinctly known from tasting. Every distinctness is because of this kshetrajna. Every syllable that you're hearing now, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on, that distinctness, whether we're talking about of the body or of the world, is because owing to kshetrajna, the presence because of which the sensations of the kshetra are distinctly identified. Word number 3 was jnanam, refers to the 20 values which are meant to internalize the defaulted extroverted mind. Upon birth, our minds by default is extroverted because the world is extroverted. That's how ignorance works. It's over there. The solutions are over there, never here. Therefore, by default, being born, the mind gets extroverted and is trained to be extroverted. And so jnanam is to bring this back by living in accordance with what we would say the Satya Yuga. Those times when we didn't have internet and didn't have Google and didn't have so much opportunity for distraction. Incidentally, we didn't have as much knowledge, but at the same time, ironically, we had as much knowledge. We had culture. So we have lost culture, but we do have access to the knowledge. But has that actually helped us? That's something that you can answer yourself. In the 1960s in America, we had the LSD movement, the communal movement. In the 1980s, that communal movement has almost completely vanished into a selfish movement. More for me, less for you. Technology we're surely getting, but culture we are losing. And so jnanam is to put you back in touch with culture. In fact, culture is by far the most important aspect when it comes to dharma, when it comes to living a full life. Culture. Word number 4 was jneyam. Jneyam is that which is to be known. Red alert, it is to be known. Without knowing which becomes the greatest sin, even if you have lived a life of morality, a life of contribution, a life of giving, a happy one. It is still the greatest sin to be born with a human body, capable of assimilating the highest knowledge, and not to use this God-given free will for that reason alone. Therefore, jneyam is Brahman. We said that Brahman is neither sat nor asat, neither existent nor non-existent, but rather an independent reality that awares the fact of the existent or the non-existent state of objects. It awares the fact it is now existent. That fact of that object being existent is awared. It is no longer existent. It's in potential. That fact of it being no longer existent in potential, that too is being awared by Brahman. Therefore, Brahman always remains an independent reality that gives distinctness or knowledge of existent and non-existent state of objects. Word number 5, Prakriti. Prakriti is space, time, and all objects accommodated by them. Another word for this is upadana karanam, which means material cause or maya. So any material, space is also material, remember? It's just the subtlest of the subtlest material is also Prakriti. Purusha is the name given to Brahman from the standpoint of the universe. And this Purusha takes the role of what we call the nimitta karana, the intelligent cause, when it is associated, apparently associated with Prakriti. Now, what do we call Ishvara? How do we define Ishvara, if you remember? It is both upadana karanam and nimitta karanam, the material cause and the intelligent cause. Why is that so? Because we said some sessions ago that Ishvara technically means Purusha Prakriti mixture. Owing to the fact that you are capable of distinctly recognizing this experience to be what it is, because of what is that possible? I will ask Robert.
Because of consciousness, Brahman, Purusha.
What's another name for Purusha, Sunita? Say.
Kshetrajna.
Yeah. Heard you say Kshetrajna. And give me 5 examples of Prakriti. Verse 24 to 26 discusses spiritual sadhanas, and they all culminate to jnana yoga. Jnana yoga just means self-knowledge, Brahma Vidya. Verse 27 to 34 will conclude this chapter. We'll talk about the benefits of self-knowledge. What is the benefit once this knowledge is assimilated? Continuing since last week on to verse 24. I have done the revision, continuing from now on. We talked about the 5 stages that every seeker goes through in order to make this mind qualified and subtle and to enjoy the full benefits a human being is capable of enjoying, being the fullest developed, capable, decisive, and intelligent human being. The first stage is karma yoga. Now, this stage starts with the assumption that the person says, I am a karta, I am a doer. And therefore, this is perfect for such a person because karma means action. Therefore, it is a yoga of action. It uses your actions to slowly destroy this notion that I am a doer. How does it do this? Because if we do not include divinity in our actions, then whatever I'm doing, who's doing it? I'm doing it for myself, and I'm doing it because I want results. In other words, I keep on reinforcing this individual I. But when you're changing the attitude and you say, I'm actually doing this for the one boss, for the one great being, for the Lord. Then slowly, slowly, you start to lose that sense of I am doing it and I have to do it for myself, but rather I am doing it for the grand order, for that vast intelligence that is upholding this universe right now and will continue to do so even when this body is over. This vast intelligence, Ishvara, is none other than the one to whom I am performing my actions and from which I am receiving these results. Therefore, karma yoga is for the karta, the doer. By doing the actions for something higher than this individual through the course of time, that slowly destroys the notion that I am doing this as an individual. Just like when a person gets absorbed in a sport, they slowly, slowly forget the individual that's doing the sport. They are at one with the sport. In that same way, that karta slowly, slowly starts to dissolve by doing the actions for a higher authority, for a higher intelligence. And we also said that this attitude involves, by receiving those results, we take gratitude because we understand how many incomprehensible variables actually had to arise for you to receive what you are now receiving in this moment. It is incomprehensible beyond the human mind. However, you can still appreciate the fact it is this vast creative grand order. Finally, in the karma yoga spirits, we stop asking questions like, what's in it for me? We have to get away from this question. What's in it for me? How will I get and benefit from this? Rather, you have to change, because that's the language of the ahamkara. We have to talk the language of the spirit, the karma yoga spirit. And that spirit is, what can I contribute? From what can I get out of this to what can I contribute? What little can I give? We're not saying you can give everything, because every human being is indeed limited, but what little can I give? And with the little that I do receive from the grand order, how can I make the best use out of it? Because we said it is none other than from the Lord's hands. Here, my son, here, my child, use the resources called free will that I have given you. And therefore we say, thank you. How can I make the best use out of this? So from what's in it for me, what can I get out of this? What can I extract out of this? To, even if I don't have much to contribute, still you ask the question, what little can I contribute? Maybe it's a smile, maybe it's a yes or a no, maybe it's a conversation, anything, a comment, it counts. Otherwise, what happens? The field slowly starts to get flooded by the big mouths. You know, the big mouths usually have a lot to say, but not so much education. Therefore, it is a duty of an educated person to put something into the field. Otherwise, the big mouths will start to infringe upon the field. And therefore, the conversation turns from, we no longer can discern the truth. In fact, this is the situation today, whereby the truth no longer matters. What matters more? Opinions. So people cannot discern between facts and opinions. Simple art lost because of this inability to stay cultured. Culture lost, inability to discern facts from opinions. Therefore, we need to preserve this culture. And how? By having this clear discernment at all times. How do you do that? Well, one of the things is to switch out of the media, at least reduce it, not completely, because I know no one's going to follow that order, but at least reduce it by 5 or 10%. Otherwise, you are constantly switched into the vast network of facts and opinions all blended together, whereby one cannot even discern which is which. It's all one big truth now. Everyone seems to have their own truth. And you can only discern the real truth in and through all of this field of noise once you tune out. And then the natural clarity starts to restore. And from that clarity, you're able to truly see. That's called objectivity. So that was stage 1. Stage 2, sadhana, is upasana. Upasana simply means meditation. Ashtanga yoga, hatha yoga, even Tai Chi Chuan Kriya Yoga. So in other words, what is upasana? You're finding an object of meditation that is meaningful for you, that represents divinity, and you have a relationship with that object in a form of prayer, in a form of puja, in a form of worship, in whatever meaningful way that is true for you. And this helps to, again, reduce that extroversion, because without meditation, without that focus onto one single point, the mind by default will go into 5 points, 10 points. Therefore, we are bringing that into one singularity. And how else can you do that? By finding an object which you truly are in love with. Plus represents divinity for you. So therefore, do not pick some random object that has no meaning, but pick something that really you cannot take your eyes off, right? It could be a flower or anything that kind of induces that connection, emotional connection, but also reminds you of the whole Vedantic vision. Could be someone's face or Shankaracharya or anything that is close to you. Ganesha. Okay, stage 3 is Shravanam. What is Shravanam? Systematic and consistent study of Vedantic or Upanishadic scriptures for a length of time, under the guidance of a competent acharya. Therefore, we are systematically expounding this knowledge to you, and it is the job of the student, also the teacher, everyone, in fact, to, for a length of time, constantly inquire into this, because the mind has always more space to clarify and to understand even deeper than it did yesterday. Of course, we do know that self-knowledge removes false notions. That's why this whole spiritual sadhana is a culmination to Shravanam, to ultimately being able to receive this knowledge and not being bored by it. Stage 4 is mananam. Having heard Shravanam, now you ask yourself, do I even trust this information? Do I doubt the scriptures and the teacher? And if I do, you got 2 options. One, you can resolve it yourself, or you can present your objection to the teacher. Or 3, which is highly rare, because by the time you get to mananam, this is highly rare, the person just says, I'm going to a different system. So 2 options there. Resolve it yourself. Why? Because 0.01% of doubt is equal to 100% of ignorance. There's no such thing as, yep, I got this 99.99%, but there's 0.001% doubt. That 0.01 is as good as 100% ignorance. Why? Because Purusha has nothing to do with Prakriti. Your true nature is Purusha. It's like the snake. The superimposition of onto the rope has 0 to do with the rope. Therefore, there is no such thing as, yep, I kind of see the rope, but I see a little trace of tail of the snake. That is still ignorance. In other words, there is 0 connection between these 2 orders of reality, Prakriti and Purusha. For that reason, there should be 0.0% doubt. Stage 5, final and the highest stage, is nidityasanam. This is whereby we deliberately look through the Vedantic eyes, having been expounded this knowledge and worked on our doubts, we are still left with this mind. This educated buddhi will still be subject to having its old habits pour down endlessly, day by day. It will keep on resorting to its old ways. And it would doubt itself. It would say, you know, this shouldn't be happening. Why am I thinking the old way? Why am I thinking adharmically, even though I've been told these 20 values? In other words, if this is not happening, probably something's wrong with you. It should be happening. Why? Because for lifetimes, after lifetimes, we have been told otherwise. We have been trained otherwise. So even after this knowledge is assimilated, you will have tons and tons of narratives that are opposite to what you have heard. And it is your job to work with these narratives instead of denying them in the light of Shravanam and Mananam. Nidityasanam also involves asking yourself, how much do I really relate to the Upanishadic statements. Suppose I say to you, for example, Atma, the self, can never be objectified by the buddhi. That means you cannot think about Atma in your buddhi, because it is only in the presence of the Atma that the buddhi is objectified. Suppose I say that. In fact, I did. The question is now, how much do you understand that? Versus just, yeah, okay, I heard that before, move on. Tell me next. How much is that intimate to you? Suppose I say, Purusha is the witness, the sakshi. Purusha is the witness in reference to the witnessed. How much do you relate to that statement? Or suppose I say, when you play a flute and the melody comes from the flute, and you cannot help but to hear the melody, but also be reminded of the flute. Just like that, whenever a thought comes, you cannot help but to be reminded of the content of that thought being Sat-Chit. So suppose I'm playing a flute and you're hearing a melody. Not only are you hearing the melody, Prakriti, but also you're reminded of the source of the flute, being the Purusha in this case, the metaphorical case. Just like that, when a thought comes or an emotion comes, that is Prakriti. But at the same time, when it comes, you're immediately reminded, what is the source? What is the content out of which this thought or emotion comes? And that is Sat-Chit, the Purusha. Robert?
Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit, Andre. The teaching is that our mind operates through perception and inference, and that Brahma can't be known by perception or inference. But isn't that inference? You're inferring the existence of the flute from the melody?
Metaphorically speaking, the flute is not only playing the melody, but just by hearing the mere melody, you've been trained to be reminded of the flute. Like that, when a thought comes, you're trained to always recognize the content of that thought. Yes. Otherwise, you just get stuck with the thought itself.
Isn't that inference? You're inferring the existence of Brahma as a logical necessity. In order to understand a world of objects or a world of movement, there must be something that doesn't move.
Yeah.
So that's a logical inference. Therefore, aren't we understanding the existence of Brahma, Atman, through inference in that example?
That is one methodology by which Brahman is helped to be revealed. It is not the only inference. Inference is just one method. For example, the method of, in order to know the two, you have to be other than the two, to distinctly identify the distinctions or the differences between the two. Therefore, just through that logic alone, you can say, aha, so there must be something, even if I don't directly know about it, it is still present. Or we also use the example of the eye. You don't have to prove the existence of an eye, just by mere perception. By that alone, there must be an instrument or there must be an eye itself. Just by the mere perception of changes, there must be an existence of a non-changing principle, Brahman. So yes, there is one way of revealing the truth by inference. How do you know you have fully assimilated this and nidityasanam is no longer required? The safest answer to this is you can only rest when this body goes. So it's a lifelong progress. There's no such thing as, okay, 5 more years and I'm going to do my own thing. No, it's a lifelong process. That's the safest answer. More specifically, how do you know? Just like if I, for example, say, how do you know when you stop eating? You just know. How do you know when a partner is supposed to apologize to you and they don't do a good enough job? And they say, no, tell me more. I'm not satisfied with your answer. And then they have to kind of change their opinion. And then they say it in the right way. And they go, okay, now I know that you are truly redeeming yourself. You have rectified the problem. You just know. How do you know when to stop exercising? Yes?
Yes. So perhaps I'm just thinking about how would I know in that even if I didn't like something or something was upsetting me, it is all God. And I just accept whatever I'm experiencing. So that's how I would know that if I had a true, genuine, authentic acceptance to whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent, then I might really think that I've really assimilated to like a high degree about what is God and Brahman and that relationship. So basically, almost no resistance to what happens.
Sure. How do you know? So one way is, suppose you say, okay, I've kind of, I accept whatever happens, but then you notice there's a trail, and this trail lasts for hours, and it just doesn't leave. So the level of maturity to which we have assimilated this knowledge that it's all God indeed, directly is correlated to how short that trail is from when it's gone. When it's gone, okay, now how long from there on can I be free of it? How much do I need to go forward until it completely dissolves? Initially, it starts like maybe 2 years, we cannot forget. Then, maybe a few months, and then a day, and then hours, and then half a second.
Andre?
Yeah.
Isn't the mere existence, like individually, the mere existence itself, I've got no control. I can't control my existence, really. That itself tells me that where is God?
Yeah, so
I have no control of breathing tomorrow. I have no control of breathing the next second.
Yeah, because God is existence, and you are that. Yeah. So you are that. So you cannot do anything about yourself because you are. Yeah. Can you please go out of existence? Can't do it. Because if you were to go out of existence, everything will go out of existence. Because everything is a modification of existence. So the process of nidityasanam will eventually cease. In other words, no matter how much more inquiry you do, you discover that no further inquiry reveals the clarity of who you are more than it's already evident right now. Sure, it is nice to hear this information. You go to a different Swami and they say the same thing, but you don't go, I want to hear something more. Maybe I missed something out back then. Now I just want to see if I can capture some more information. I can know myself more. That no longer arises. But you still surely listen because it's nice to, be in the presence of this knowledge. No matter how much knowledge and what Upanishads you read, what scriptures and how confusing it is, or what oppositions you receive, it does not move you one bit. It does not change you one bit. It does not cause you to doubt yourself one bit. It does not cause you to say, wow, now I know myself even more than before. As I said before, it is either all or nothing when it comes to liberation. Snake has nothing to do with the rope. I either know the rope completely, or I know the rope with a little bit of traces of the snake peppered over it. It is only rope alone. Therefore, when this knowledge is finally true, complete, no matter who says what, you will surely appreciate the words that they talk. Now, what happens if you devoted your whole life into this work and you still get reborn? What then? The answer is very simple. You simply continue where you left off. What I mean by that specifically is you are qualified at the level which you have just recently covered in your previous life. So, for example, karma yoga or shravanam, you just find yourself understanding that naturally without any problems. You find it easy. So how is it that others are finding it hard? Now, again, see, nidityasanam is to the last breath, because this is the point of whether it shows whether you're dharmic or adharmic in the aspect of how you relate to other people. Because now I can say, oh, I'm so proud that I got it, but others are not getting it. Therefore, nidityasanam never stops. The person only until last breath has truly proven how good their track record of dharma is. Until then, they need to be alert, because one can fall for these small egoic tendencies, and thus eventually it can grow into something big. Take Ramana Maharishi, for example. He didn't even have a teacher. A simple inquiry at 16 years old. Could I be different other than this body of mine? That was enough to instigate the entire inquiry. You tell this to a 16-year-old kid today, what? let me go back to my computer games or something. 16 years old, what's the difference? He's done a lot of work in the previous life. Therefore, it's a continuity. Next verse, we'll talk about, very short verse, we say that even those who do not have access to the original scriptures, even they will get this eventually. Anye twevam ajanantaha shrutvanyebhya upasate te picha titarantyeva mrityum shruti parayanaha.
But others, not knowing in this manner, having heard from others, their teachers, being committed to what they have heard, follow that, and indeed they also cross death. Since the pursuit of knowledge is necessary, how should you advise them in order to make them qualified to do chara? If they do not have the type of mind capable of inquiring into Atma and Anatma, they are advised to follow what they have heard from their teachers. Here, what they have heard should be taken as the advice of the teacher. Often the advice may not seem to have any connection with Atma Jnana. If one is asked to do a particular asana daily, that may keep the body fit. But how, one may wonder, is it going to help the person in listening to Shastra? Or if one is put on a diet, or sent on a pilgrimage, or asked to do puja, or japa, or upasana, what has that got to do with Atma Jnana? Generally, the seekers are advised to do Gayatri Purascharana, which is a repetition of the Gayatri mantra 1 lakh or 100,000 times. The number of syllables in the mantra. In the Gayatri mantra, there are 24 syllables, and thus they're repeated 24 lakh times. Chanting daily 4 to 5 hours, one can complete it in 2 or 3 years. Though the connection between this and Atmajnana is not obvious, they do it because they are committed to what they have heard from their teachers. In time, they acquire the necessary mental discipline and the teacher begins teaching.
It's essentially saying that even if you and I do not have the access to the original scriptures, it matters not, because as long as the Acharya has the access to the originals, they study the originals and they're capable of unfolding the original in whatever language it is. In fact, I know even in Africa, in Kenya, they will teach in Swahili, the Bhagavad Gita. And one doesn't need necessarily the originals. So what it's saying really is the content is more important than the source, right? As long as the content is systematic and down to earth and applicable, one can still understand this knowledge. Therefore, it's not being denied to anyone. In other words, why would the truth be denied, right? Why would it require these special qualifications of having the originals? It doesn't. Yavat sanjayate kinchita sattvam stavara jangamam kshetra kshetrajna samyogat tadvidhi bharatarshabha.
As long as any existent thing, moving or non-moving, is born, that may you know, Arjuna, that foremost in the clan of Bharata is because of the connection between Shastra and Shastranya.
As long as something that exists, whether mobile or immobile, is born, understand that birth is because of the connection between the Kshetra and Kshetrajna. The separation between the Kshetra and Kshetranya is what is called moksha. How does this connection take place? The Kshetranya is Atma and the Kshetra is Anatma. What kind of association is possible between Atma and Anatma? Shankara says it cannot be an association like that between a rope and a pot, both of which have a definite form and have parts. A rope has 2 ends, which you can tie to the neck of the pot and thus bring them together. This kind of samyoga is not possible between the Kshetra and Kshetranya, which part of the Kshetranya, which is pure formless consciousness, will you connect to the Kshetra? It would be like trying to attach space to an object. It cannot be done because it is free from parts. Nor can we say that there is an association like that between the cloth and the threads, because the cloth is the thread. Similarly, there is no association between kshetra and kshetranya, because essentially they are not two different things. Nor does the kshetranya undergo a change to become the kshetra, because it is not available for any change. If consciousness is blue, slowly it can turn into grey, but consciousness is formless and thus has no features that it can change. Further, kshetra is an object of your knowledge and is inert, and the kshetranya is the subject, Atman, which is pure consciousness. Between them, there is no possibility of connection because, as Shankara has said elsewhere, they are opposite in nature like light and darkness. Yet one is mistaken for the other, and the properties of one are mistaken for the properties of the other. The kshetranya and its nature are taken as the body, and the attributes of the body are taken for the kshetranya atma. This apparent association is one of superimposition, adhyasa, due to avidya. It is purely a false cognition. When you say I am, meaning the body, the existence and consciousness of the body belong to Atma. Then again, when you say I am fat, I am tall, and so on, the properties of the body are superimposed upon Atma. This is all due to adhyasa, the cause of which is the absence of discrimination between the kshetra and kshetranya. That establishes the connection immediately. If there is no discriminative knowledge of an oyster shell, it is mistaken for a piece of silver. Similarly, a rope is mistaken for a snake. Two different objects, the rope and snake, have seemingly become one. How? By a connection only due to superimposition. Similarly, the association of kshetra and kshetranya is in the form of adhyasa, superimposition, characterized by false knowledge. It is born of ignorance.
Thank you. The essence of this verse is that every experience that we're having is a mixture of kshetram and kshetrajna. Kshetram, the field, and kshetrajna, the knower of the field. In fact, this is the title of chapter 13. And not knowing these two realities, that is called ignorance, avidya, and that leads to samsara. And samsara leads one to be preoccupied with kshetram alone, because that's all I see. Therefore, that's all I can get involved with, things within time. Now, what's the features of kshetram? The first one is achetana. Achetana means it is insentient. It is not conscious. Now, suppose a neuroscientist doesn't have knowledge of kshetrajna, and they are investigating into consciousness, which is actually kshetrajna. What kind of problems would this generate? What would they helplessly do? They will helplessly superimpose this kshetrajna and turn it into kshetram. And therefore, it will become an object worthy of mapping out all of the neurons being mapped out onto the computer so that I can actually talk to your consciousness. I looked at a documentary recently. This is the latest in neuroscience. Let me look inside your brain so that I can map out your consciousness and upload that neural network onto the computer. Therefore, I can talk to you through the computer. And science and research goes into this. What else is a product of this mistake? Artificial intelligence. A self-aware machine. Hey, as the book said, it is like trying to take space. Now, never mind, consciousness is even more subtle than space. It's like trying to take space and trying to put it inside a quantum computer, which is now the latest in computing, or the CPU, and trying to make that into some kind of an idea of self-aware machine. A self-aware machine, it technically is nothing but a program that's picking up patterns and therefore registering those patterns in a database. And then just by that, that's what they call artificial intelligence. But can it ever be taking the subtlest, which you cannot deal with because it is nirvikara, nirguna, it doesn't have attributes, and take that which is formless, and try to put it inside a formful machine, a CPU. Impossible. Saguna is also a feature of shaytram. In other words, it is attributeful. Therefore, the whole life becomes about participation in attributes, discussing and researching attributes. Even consciousness, as I just said, the neuroscientist would turn that into an attribute and therefore try to fund his or her research through that mistaken notion alone. Savikara, constantly changing, and therefore life becomes about talking about changes, improving, growing. Let the stock market grow. Let the GDP of the country grow. Let's expand. Why? Because the entire world is one big superimposition. And everyone who is yet to know about kshetrajna participates in this world as though it is the final reality. Therefore, let's participate in our changes and our attributes. It is also mithya. It is dependent. That is why it is so hard to agree. Because you can always look at one thing from so many different angles, because it is always dependent on a different point of view, on a different variable. Question is now, what sustains this ignorance? What sustains this worldwide avidya, the superimposition that everyone is under the spell of? No exception. President, politicians, doctors, scientists, biologists, chemists, every single individual born is under the spell of this same superimposition, atyasa. What sustains this ignorance? Identification with the kshetram. And therefore I get naturally participating within that field of belief, within that field of reality. Never looking if there's something else. So just a little metaphor. Let's take, for example, it's like identifying with the dream body. Suppose you identify with the dream body right now. And because of that identification with the dream body, you automatically become an ignorant person about your waking body. It's one or the other. Identify with the dream body, ignorant of the waking body. Consequently, whatever happens to the dream body, who suffers? You suffer because you are ignorant of your waking body. The dream is going through a world war or a conflict. I suffer because I'm identified with this kshetram body, participating in this kshetram field.
And Andre,
go on.
Yes, I was just thinking, just commenting on what you said, just from a personal aspect, it just feels also, if you don't appreciate consciousness as everything, all the material aspect, all the prakriti, all the creations, even though they're wonderful and exciting and marvelous, there's something sort of a bit depressing about just having that one dimensionality, just identifying with the material.
It is
satisfying, although it's amazing.
Yeah, good.
For me, it just seems like it just doesn't quite hit the spot.
You know, if you tell a child to go out and see the world, but the child has never seen the world and gone out, they will have no motivation because they do not know what the other side is like. For them, all it is, the whole reality is about being home. So it's very hard to persuade one that hasn't yet tasted the fullness of oneself. Therefore, you cannot really say that from the aspect of an ajnani. That is only true in the aspect of having gained a knowledge greater than just kshetram. So it always depends on the point of view. Or being identified with a movie character. Through the course of time, I start to, as though through the movie progresses, take on whatever the movie character is going through. I take on that because I forget, become ignorant about the person. Because why? I take identification with the movie character. Same concept. What sustains ignorance? Identification with the kshetram. Now, when we bring this to consciousness, what is the effect or consequence of having ignorance of kshetrajna? What Alison was just mentioning. Number one, mortality. Fear of mortality, the greatest driver of health and life extension, Cryonics is whereby they will freeze the body and then recover it, hopefully in the future when the medicine has increased, to continue living. And I've seen a doco on this. Literally, they have people right now frozen. So again, I'm showing you how much this world is driven by this one superimposition that everyone is under the spell of. It's not just a random conversation in the class. It's literally happening right now. Right? The I, the kshetrajna, the immortal being, take myself to be mortal. Sounds like a tragedy. Well, it's not a tragedy until you discover kshetrajna. And then you go, wow, I better start to discover this now because you cannot go back anymore. And therefore, the person cannot stand their limitations because inherently they know there must be more to this. But since they only know about kshetram, they are only looking within the kshetram field for solutions in a form of becoming. Let me become bigger. Because inherently, you know, you are that which is biggest of the biggest. Nothing is bigger. Maintaining, acquiring, all arising out of this false belief that I'm going to get rid of my limitation by getting this, by becoming this. And we all fall for it over and over. Every single age, every culture fall for this. So then the purpose of living becomes about removing this limitation, as I said, through different means. And not only that, but according to your age. You remove this limitation as a child, how? Through toys. When we grow up, how? Through community and being together. But also other means, extreme, like war. You know, we want to be peaceful. So we want to destroy you because you're denying us our limitlessness. So we need to destroy a nation. We need to conquer a nation. How many wars have taken place just because one side or the other is unable to accept the little land that they have been offered? No, we want more because we identify with more. Need to belong. Need to be part of something bigger. That's a giveaway. That's a common thing today. I want to be part of something bigger. Why? Hear the language. Because I am that which is much bigger. I cannot stand this smallness. I want to be something part of the bigger. The problem with that is when you're part of that something bigger, you find out, I can be part of something even bigger. It never stops. Promiscuity, another thing. Want to release myself from this sense of limitation. Save the world. Go to Mars. Haven't even mastered one's own psychology, and yet we are sophisticated at building precise instruments to go to Mars. The consequence of not knowing about kshetrajna. The first is mortality. The second consequence is rebirth. What's the logic of this? Desire, everyone's born with desire. Desire leads to karmas, to actions. Actions lead to punya papa. In other words, sins and virtues, merits and demerits. Naturally, when you apply an action, you're going to make a mistake or you're going to do something good. That's called punya papa. Punya papa generates sukham dukkam, pain and pleasure. And pain and pleasure leads to a new birth. Why? Because the body needs to continue receiving the unexpressed pains and pleasures from the actions that could have not been expressed in the last life because the body died. For example, someone gets born in a highly successful family, joyous, everything's lovely, the smoothest, luckiest, happiest family. And you go, wow, I'm kind of jealous, why was I not born in such a family? But let's analyze this. Why are some people born in a highly successful and everything's just going so well? Because I'm, as a person who is born in that family, experiencing my sukham that I could have not experienced in a previous life. Therefore, now being born, I'm born in a circumstance that offers me the opportunity to experience that sukham that I could have not enjoyed in the last life. So on the surface, it looks like wow, but in reality, it is not so wow, because that kind of environment can lead to entitlement. And the person becomes entitled in life. And now say, I don't need anything. I don't need this mumbo jumbo. Just give me more materialism. So it doesn't mean just because you're born in a good family that you will have in reference to self-knowledge, the right opportunities. So again, as I said, rebirth is like a stock market. There's no such thing as, okay, I studied Gita today, next life, and it's going to be a simple continuation. No, you can easily fall back. You know, we often say, I get it. So there's this humility, you know, you do not really know because it's the grand order. Absolutely. At the same time, do not let this turn into a low self-confidence mode. Oh, you know, this is not my turn. I'm not good enough. This is for the Indians. This is for this is for that, right? I'm a different age. This is not for me. I say this, you will succeed and you must succeed, period. How about that as an attitude? You will succeed and you must succeed in this life. There is no next life. Of course, saying that, there is that humility aspect to it. You know, okay, Ishwara, I am your employee. I give you whatever you need. Act through this body as though you're a messenger. But at the same time, I will and I must succeed. Continuing the verse, because of this fundamental mistake, which is I am the body, yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam stavara jangamam. Every being, moving or unmoving like a tree, is born and dies yet again, whether they like it or not. Oh, I'm born again, got new parents. Why? Whether you like it or not, you'll get born. As long as this connection is still mixed up. Kshetra and kshetranya connection is still mixed up. Because of this fundamental mistake, I am a body, thus I get born. That is it. Then what's the solution to this? We cannot just talk about the problem. The solution is this fundamental mistake can only be corrected through knowledge. Only through knowledge alone. Just like, what is the only thing that's going to remove darkness in a room? Is it going to be your meditation? Is it going to be some magical sound, some magical mantra, some magical asana? No, it is to bring in the light. The only thing that can, in this universe, illumine darkness is light itself. So there's no question of many paths. This is a common misconception. Many paths to liberation. There's no question. Even though all paths, yes, they all lead there, we need to understand what that means. They all purify the mind so that it may lead to the culminating jnana yoga, self-knowledge, so that it remove this sense of ignorance that I am the body. So jnana yoga, self-knowledge, that alone can eliminate this superimposition, as the book talked about, this atyasa. And what is the superimposition? Constantly putting mithya onto satyam. Mithya body turns into satyam I. Mithya world turns into a satyam world, into the absolute truth. And therefore we will start to fight as though it is so important to preserve this mithya. But in actuality, it is all relative. Now, how does this self-knowledge solve the problem? Right, because I just said self-knowledge, the only solution. How specifically does it solve this problem of removing this notion, I am the body? First of all, as you probably already experienced through this class, we're pointing out the distinctions between kshetra and kshetranya. In order to know something, you first have to hear about it so that you may recognize the distinctions. And then you can relate those distinctions in reference to yourself, in reference to your own experience. Sure, there's changes, there's this, there's that. But what about it? In my experience, it doesn't change. And then you inquire into that alone. The closer you look, the more the truth becomes evident. In fact, suppose you're in a crowded environment and then you think someone looks like your friend. The closer you get there, the more features come out, because the more you see, the more you recognize they're not your friend. The closer we come to the truth, the more the truth becomes evident. That's why it's important to hear this from so many different angles. How else does it solve jnana yoga, this superimposition? It shows us that all objects are resolvable into smaller units. These units are called mithya. Until every unit, the smallest of the smallest, ultimately including time and space, resolves into pure concepts in awareness, in your awareness, in anyone's awareness. Now, can you further reduce awareness? I know you're going to say no, but let's say someone says, yes, I can further reduce awareness. How would you reply to this statement? Suppose I say, yeah, you can further reduce awareness. And therefore awareness now becomes mithya, because mithya means that which can be reduced further.
You would need a prior awareness to
Good.
recognize the other awareness.
You would be aware of that change in awareness, that more limited awareness. So there would still be awareness.
Okay, so suppose you say, I can further reduce awareness. So in other words, I have now broken up awareness into two parts. So now the question is, what awareness, and because of what awareness is there, which is able to recognize this half of awareness, this half of awareness, and the space in between. What awareness was there to observe these three components? One half, the other half, and a space in between. In other words, awareness didn't go anywhere. This division of awareness was only a concept in the mind, a concept of putting it on the left side, on the right side, and then therefore there's a separation. But there's still awareness, as Adrian just said, of this whole process taking place. Therefore, I cannot further reduce myself because I need to be required there to tell you, to report that I've actually reduced myself. Why can you not reduce awareness further? Someone please answer.
Because it's not limited. It's indivisible. You can't divide it, and it's not an object. So you can't put boundaries around it.
I've split my awareness into half.
Yeah, you can't split it. It's
Now, who was there to know that there was a half splitting? Right? What witness was there to recognize that? At Ramayana, there's a nice story whereby Rama was shooting arrows and couldn't kill Ravana. And he got very agitated. Ravana's head just kept on growing. Take one arrow, shoot. Head grows back, you know, the Ramayana story. And he was kind of frustrated. So he had to invoke what's called an nidityasanam mantra, which is actually the essence of Vedanta. So he shoots this arrow after invoking the nidityasanam, which is the essence of Vedanta, and he shoots and strikes Ravana's heart, hridayam. And Ravana finally falls. Now, what's the symbolism here? Ravana's heads that kept on regrowing, that symbolizes ignorance. No matter how many arrows, what methods you kept shooting at ignorance just keeps on growing again and again and again. No matter what sadhana you try to apply, ignorance just sustains life after life after life, until would only shoot one arrow alone, and that is the arrow of aditya hridayam, in other words, self-knowledge arrow, striking the hridayam, the heart. Now we said last session, some sessions ago, that heart actually represents the buddhi, the source where this ignorance is, and the source from where, the place where this ignorance is destroyed. And therefore, no more heads. Ravana was killed. Now, I know some historians are going to say, actually, Ravana got reincarnated into Kansa and so on. That's a different argument, but this is just a metaphorical. Only one arrow could solve the job.
Just have another go at this reducing down everything to mithya and then mithya into consciousness. I know we usually take it through subatomic particles. And well, I'm just thinking, like, I don't really know about subatomic particles other than what I read. You know, I don't have any experience of them. And how would people, you know, in centuries gone by even know about them? So at what stage, what level do you go down in mithya before you can say this is a concept that is only available in consciousness? You know?
Sure. The subtlest of the subtlest is time and space. You cannot reduce that's the subtlest towards before consciousness, quote, before consciousness. So we said that some time ago that even space can be reduced in terms of distance, 100 centimeters, 1 centimeter, 1 millimeter, and then the Planck length. In other words, even space itself can get reduced. Even time itself, units can get reduced. So time and space are the smallest units that can, mithya units that can get reduced, Lloyd. Everything else is coming or arising out of time and space.
Right, so that's just a concept, and then you say that the concept is only there because of consciousness.
Next verse will be the first benefit of jnana yoga, and that will be having a balanced perspective. Sammam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyat swaninashyantam yaf pashyati sapashyati.
the one who sees the Lord as remaining the same in all beings, as the one who is not being destroyed in the things that are perishing, he alone sees. What does he see? He sees Parameshwara, the one who is limitless, Param, and the cause of everything. Ishvara, not an entity situated somewhere in particular, but the one who abides as the same in all beings. The one who remains as Sama, equal, without any attributes, in all beings is Parameshwara, who is unfolded by the Shastra as Satya, that which exists and is the existence of everything in the form of jnana, consciousness, which is ananta, limitless. Then again, among all these time-bound things that are continuously getting destroyed, he remains as the one who does not die. The body dies, the mind dies, as the thoughts keep dying one after the other, the whole time bound existent world dies. What does not die is Satya. Only an object, Nama Rupa, dies away, not the existence that sustains both its presence and its absence. When a pot exists, it is. When it is broken, the pot is. That is existence, which is Parameshwara. It never goes away. It is always with one thing or the other.
Summary so far. Verse 1 to 23, we talked about the 6 words I discussed at the beginning. Verse 24 to 26, we just completed verse 26, was a general discussion about jnana yoga or sadhanas. Now we are entering verse 27 to the last verse of this chapter, 34. 27 to 34 is what are the benefits of jnana yoga palam. Body-mind complexes are countless. And every one of these body-mind complexes undergo modifications of birth, affliction, sickness, old age, and death. Sounds depressing, doesn't it? Every single body goes through these modifications: birth, afflictions, sickness, old age, and death. However, the verse continues, samam sarveshu bhuteshu parameshwaram. All the while these modifications are going on, there resides this one changeless, most attractive reality that dwells in and through those bodies that are undergoing those unfortunate modifications all throughout. And a jnani, talking about a wise person now, a jnani is established in this very reality, Parameshwaram, as this reality, which is also called in sometimes you'll see Sahaja Samadhi. When you see Sahaja Samadhi, just means permanently established in this knowledge. No wavering. The Buddha doesn't waver. Oh, I don't know who I am. There's doubts, just constant. In other words, the jnani, having ascertained this knowledge, Parameshwaram, I am at one with Parameshwaram, is still conscious of the instrument, the talking, doing instrument, no doubt. But all throughout that, in the background, the buddhi never wavers from Parameshwaram. From, when I say Parameshwara, I mean Purusha, Kshetrajna, Atman. These are different names. Never wavers, not even for a second, not even during an argument, not even while driving a car or in an emergency situation. Never. So the first benefit we can therefore call a balanced perspective. And this balanced perspective neutralizes the need to be constantly enmeshed in the worldly affairs. Because you brought in, just revealed, more accurately to say, revealed another ever-present reality. Before it was just shaytram. Therefore, let's get enmeshed in shaytram. Now, wait a minute. There's something more here. No more enmeshed. And likes and dislikes get redirected to something more intelligent, something more purposeful, divine, no longer just out there. Let's just expand the energies in different callings. Someone calls me, let's go. No. Here's where I belong. Here's what I need to do. Here's my strengths. Here's my weaknesses. Let's hang around my sphere of influence. That's it. How to live? Hang around your sphere of influence. Simple. Now, what is this balanced perspective of a jnani? In reference to the self-inquiry, of this reality, a balanced perspective involves having the knowledge of both Purusha and Prakriti. How else can it be balanced unless there is both? So obviously, if one is, suppose a person is preoccupied with only one, and this happens, a person is now preoccupied with Purusha, consciousness. Wow, I'm consciousness, let's just go into that field alone. Happens all the time. What's the problem with that? They lose perspective. Now they put themselves above everyone. Start doing even adharma, because I'm a non-doer, I'm beyond all this, nothing touches me, so I can do whatever I want. Loss of perspective. Of course, only having knowledge of the Prakriti, definitely loss of perspective. And I just gave you some examples earlier. The entire world basically is a evidence of that. So from an aspect of a jnani, understands what? Prakriti and Purusha. What about Prakriti? Prakriti means the material cause of everything. In other words, the jnani is able to treasure mithya, not discard it. Oh, it's mithya. No. Treasure it. You know why? Because mithya is because of which you are here now. Everything meaningful to you is mithya. Your mom, dad, parents, wife, spouse, internet, knowledge, the book that you're holding, words, all of it is mithya. Everything meaningful to us is mithya. Therefore, a jnani is able to treasure mithya instead of looking down upon it as, oh, it's just an appearance. No. A jnani also knows clearly about Purusha. Not knows as in an object of knowledge, but knows I am the Purusha without having to verbalize it, because to verbalize it, you're not turning into an object of knowledge. In other words, this Purusha is the awareing principle because of which I am conscious right now, because of which I am self-aware right now. Maureen, are you self-aware?
Yeah.
That is because of Purusha. Okay, so if you're self-aware, the answer is, see, the mistake we get made is, oh, that's because this body is alive. Mistake. Do you know why people think that? Because since beginningless time, this Purusha was under the spell of ignorance. I didn't know that because I am is because of myself alone, not because of this worn instrument. So as this knowledge starts to progress and enter deeper and deeper into your system, you recognize more and more how little you need this body, how much you're not this body. That becomes more and more evident. Does something come to mind when I say tilakam? So a tilakam is a symbol for the third eye. And the third eye, specifically the chakra, is over the ajna chakra. The prefix a is fullness. Jna obviously is a root for jnanam, so full knowledge. Therefore, wearing a tilakam is awareness of the fullness of this knowledge, which includes both Purusha and Prakriti. Third eye, I see in between both existence and non-existence. I am other than the two, in between. Beautiful symbolism. Now, it doesn't matter if a girl or even if a man's wearing it and doesn't know about this, it is still a very subtle symbol that can make a profound impact upon discovering this knowledge and going, wow, I'm so glad that, I've been wearing one. Next verse will be second benefit of Jnana Yoga, which will be immortality. That's what every single human being wants. You want immortality? Don't go for cryonics. It's not going to work. Go for self-knowledge. Okay, and then we'll close with verse 28.
Where does our own personality come into picture in this whole process?
In terms of helping personality that helps this knowledge, I have not found any specifics with that. In fact, self-knowledge would not be made for a certain person. Or only if you are rich or only if you are in between, only then you will get it. So maybe if the person's there with maybe erratic or rajasic, or maybe too kind of jumpy up and down, maybe it's hard for them to actually sit down and just trust this, right? Maybe they're thinking, I want to do this, I want to do that. So if you're talking in reference to having the right calmness, the right trust, the right faith, right? In terms of, yeah, okay, I can stay and listen, then personality surely does play an effect. Yeah, but then again, you can develop these qualities with anyone. Anyone can develop these qualities.
Yeah, it's more in developing self-awareness of understanding your own self, your own personality, and transacting in the world so that you're in tune with everything. I don't know. It's just a thought that's come.
Actually, I'm going to extend on that thought because you gave me an extra points. See, suppose someone doesn't have the experience of being in life and suffering a little bit to get to what it's like to suffer, then most of this stuff is not going to be relevant to them. It's like, okay, let's move on. Give me the good feel stuff. I want to feel good.
Yeah.
So it is actually healthy if someone actually went through pain, had to survive on their own, and knows what it's like to cry and to to be defeated even. To all of these things help a lot because they mature the person and they take this seriously. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavasthitam ishwaram nahinastyat manatmanam tato yati param gatim.
Because of seeing the Lord as the same as the one who obtains in the same form everywhere, he does not destroy himself by himself. Therefore, he reaches the ultimate end. Answers that this is not a problem because it is proper to say that all those who are ignorant are completely indifferent to the Atma and therefore are destroying themselves. Everything else can stray from your sight, but never Atma. It is always self-evident and never becomes remote. In spite of it being eternally present, because he is ignorant, a person completely sets it aside, taking the anatma, the body-mind-sense complex, as the atma, naturally becomes the kata, and therefore the abhokta. Being a frightened, limited kata, he is always doing both good and bad karma and accumulates punya papa. Once his life here is over, he has accomplished nothing and therefore has destroyed himself. Because of the punya papa, he assumes another body, which also he destroys in time. In Tamil, there is a verse which says that in this great beautiful path, the world, a beggar, the jiva went on asking the potmaker, Ishwara, to make for him a pot, the human physical body. Because of his prayers, he was given a good body, a vessel that is meant to be filled with knowledge. He was so ecstatic about the pot that he put it on his head and began dancing. Naturally, it fell down and broke. He did not fill it up with knowledge. Assuming new bodies one after the other, the ignorant person keeps destroying them because of abuse of his free will. The very endowment that can release him from samsara.
The next benefit will be freedom from mortality. And then we will see Adi Shankara's logic for why do we destroy ourselves by not pursuing this knowledge. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukhabhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.